All right, welcome to another episode of the NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode, we were talking about the Carolina Panthers, and we are going to do the 2023 draft review, season preview, and I am joined by Will Kunkel from Fox Charlotte. How are you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on again. I think we did this 2 years ago during the combine. Is that right?
It might have been even last year. Yeah, it's time goes quick, right?
Yeah, it does.
Especially in the NFL world. I feel like, this time of year, there's always fun things to talk about, even for bad teams, right? I feel like there's something to talk about. There's optimism all around. And I want to start actually, obviously as a Bears fan, we were excited about the trade with the Panthers, and I haven't had a chance to talk to you or many Panther, fans. What was the reaction with the trade for the Bears? I mean, was it, obviously, excitement or what were the thoughts in Charlotte when that came through?
So it obviously depends who you talk to, right? Like what corner of the fan base you get on Twitter. I think generally speaking, the overall feeling was excitement because you went out and you did something that gave you the opportunity to get any player that you wanted. Obviously, when people saw that DJ Moore was involved in the trade, emotions kicked in, and some were upset about it. Some people understood it. Some people were excited. They got rid of, like again, the gamut of emotions. But generally speaking, I think it was the right move to make. You can always get a receiver somewhere in the draft. They were not going to give up Derek Brown or Brian Burns. Those are the guys that you covet, and you got to pay a lot in order to be good in the NFL. And you got to have a quarterback. They don't have a quarterback. They haven't had a quarterback since Cam was good in 2015, 16, 17 when they went to the playoffs against the Saints. So they had to get a quarterback, but in order to get something, you got to give up something. So I think that Scott really did the best that he could do in order to go up from 9-1. Because next year you look at the names, and nobody's trading that number one pick. Like no one's getting rid of Caleb Williams or Drake May. And if they, for some reason, a good team who has a quarterback has like a horrible year due to injuries, it's going to cost a fortune. So I think this was the right move for the Panthers.
Yeah, and when you look at Frank Reich, coming in, I think obviously you wanted to pair him with a quarterback, and I'm sure there was thoughts up to the draft, just if it was the right quarterback. I mean, what was that conversation like? I mean, obviously Bryce Young size and everything, but he's a talented player though, right?
Very talented player, and it's interesting the size. It's real. Like he's small, he's short, but when you watch the film, it doesn't show up in film. Like it doesn't. The ball doesn't get knocked down at the line. He wasn't injured. He wasn't Tua. Now Tua's injury obviously was a freak accident with the hip and obviously the concussions. And then of course you just compare him to Tua because they went to Alabama, as if that makes them somewhat the same person. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. But the consensus with the Panthers was that the scouts loved Bryce Young from the moment they started watching him, and they've been watching him for a couple of years. It took the coaches a little bit longer, not because it took them longer to be convinced, but because Frank wasn't watching Bryce Young. He was with the Colts, and then he had time off, so then he was interviewing, and then he had to hire his staff, then he had to get to know his staff, and then he started to watch film. And then as soon as he started to watch film, it became very obvious that Bryce Young was the creme de la creme in this draft. So they had consensus and they had conviction on Bryce, and they wouldn't have gone up to 1 if they didn't have conviction on him or any guy for that matter. So I think Bryce was there. Like if he was 6'4", the conversation isn't even being had because he has all the intangibles. He can step in and start day one because he's so smart.
Absolutely. And he just, seems to be a great guy too, seeing him on in the Manning episodes in camp. Really like that. What about, and obviously I haven't heard this, but what about Frank Reich? Did him wanting to trade up, have anything to do with like, the Colts at all, wanting to get ahead of them, knowing they needed a quarterback? Did that play into this at all?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I don't think it was because it's the Colts, because it's his old team or anything like that. Whoever's ahead of them, right? Like whoever needs a quarterback, you want to get ahead of, especially if you're trusting your scouts, and at that point, the scouts are coming to you with their grades. My guess is, you had Bryce Young here, you had C.J. Stroud a little here, then you had Anthony Richardson or Will Levis a little down here. So the gap kind of grew person by person. So you want to go up, and if you have conviction on the guy, you got to get ahead of anybody else that wants a quarterback because the drop off was significant. And just to skip ahead, and I don't know if anyone even cares, but the defensive end, DJ Johnson, it's not that they thought he was amazing. It's that they went up and got him because the drop off from him, the next guy, was so large that they said, all right, we got to go get him now, because if we don't get him now, the edge rusher that's next, it probably isn't worth it.
Yeah, and I'm not one that does mock drafts because we don't know what teams are needing. We don't know all of that. It's just, I mean, it's interesting, like learning the different names, but when it comes to like what teams need and what they value and all that, we're not inside those rooms.
It's tough to know. There's so many variables, and I could answer 100 questions about the Panthers. You ask me 10 questions about anything else, I'm like, I don't really know. Not because I don't care. It's just I'm this focused in on the Panthers, and I can give you their third string center, which nobody cares about.
Well, maybe we'll get there. I did want to ask. You had talked about the scouts, and this is maybe something I didn't think about. I didn't know about. When a new head coach comes in, do they bring their own scouts? I mean, because that would be tough. You come into an organization and there's scouts there, like just building that trust and trusting those scouts. Like, do you know how that works at all?
So I don't know. Generally speaking, I can't imagine you get rid of everyone that's done all the groundwork for your organization. You have to trust them to some capacity, and they're more, I think, front office guys anyway, because they're hired by Scott Fitterer versus the head coach. I'm sure Frank will say, "Hey, this scout is tried and trusted. I love this dude. Let's bring him on." And Scott would say, "Cool," or do whatever. But every other scout is scouting for their team and their needs. So bringing your guys over, it just wouldn't make any sense. It'd be square peg round hole type of deal.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just kind of obviously look at the draft. I mean, we talked about Bryce Young. I mean, overall, what is the sense of how the Panthers did in the draft?
It was so so funny because the trade happened so long ago that it was we knew that they were going to draft number one. And it wasn't exciting, so there was no unknown going in. So I think there was a little bit of luster that was lost, if that's possible, when you draft number one overall, only because there was no big surprise or shock or something to rile everybody up on draft night. And then they didn't have a whole lot of picks. They only had 5 picks throughout the draft total. So I think the consensus is, if you're smart enough to think about what they did to get up to one, that it was awesome. And it was a sexy draft that Scott said that he was going to have. No more linemen, more quote unquote boring picks, but it was the sexy draft of wide receivers with Jonathan Mingo, defensive end, and quarterback. I think he did the best that he could with the picks that he had, frankly. So it was a good draft. Obviously, we won't know for another 3 years, honestly.
That's true. And I guess that kind of leads me to, we don't know, how long it's going to take to for Bryce Young to really kind of develop. But what about the receivers? I mean, is Jonathan Mingo going to come in and like step in right away? I know last time we talked, there were some issues about Terrace Marshall kind of even getting on the field, and obviously now they've added Thielen and Chark. I mean, what is the sense of Jonathan Mingo like fitting into the offense like right away? Is it going to take him time or?
Yeah, it's going to take him time. And it's tough to answer only because we haven't seen much of him. It's only been OTAs. And then even if he looks great in training camp, which is when we get an extended look, we've seen dudes look awesome in training camp like Terrace Marshall Jr. and then just disappeared once the season started. Last year, it was Shi Smith. He was getting all the accolades. I mean, I sat down with players like Christian McCaffrey, and he told me, like, dude to watch out for was Shi. Watch out for Shi. But it's different when you get out there, and can you create that separation? Can you make the big plays? Are you relevant every single play, or are you just making a play here and there, maybe? And then when the ball is thrown to you, can you catch the dang ball? Like that was an issue last year. So, I mean, you got to just speak frankly in that any rookie that comes in, unless you're Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, it's going to take them a minute. Now, this wide receiver room is not as awesome as I think some people might think it is. DJ Chark has never stayed healthy for a full season. Hayden Hurst, albeit a tight end, hasn't been able to stay healthy recently. He just had some hernia worked on as well. So he's not out there for OTAs. Adam Thielen getting a little bit older doesn't mean he's not going to be any good, but there's still a question mark. And then who else is going to step up? Is it going to be Mingo? Is it going to be Terrace Marshall Jr.? Is it going to be Shi Smith? Derek Wright? CJ Saunders? I mean, it could be anybody. So there's an opportunity to be had. But who knows who's going to fill in, honestly.
Within like the fan base, is there a sense of like, I mean, this might be Terrace Marshall's last like shot? Like if he doesn't do anything this year, I mean, they're gonna, kind
Yeah,
of let
what
him
year
go.
is he in?
It almost seems
He's
like he's
third
third
year.
year. Yeah, I
I
think
was I
so.
think he's third year. So what's he got? 4 years on his deal. Is that right? I'm like trying to look it up right now as I sit here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so he's had a 4 year deal. So this is his third year, and they're gonna, depending on what money they would save if they cut him. He's so freakishly talented, and he
Hmm.
works so hard. To coach, according to all the coaches that I talked to, that you'd be really tough to cut bait with him unless you just see, it just ain't happening. And they'll know by the end of this year. But I'd be surprised if this is his last year. But if I would be willing to bet that if he was a first round draft pick and you had the option to give him that 5th year, they probably would not. If things stayed on the track. But this is like a make it or break it year for Terrace. I mean, it really is. It's a big year for him.
I always wonder. So, obviously being a Bears fan, last year I kind of like, I was honest with the roster. I wasn't going to get too excited about wins and losses. And, you look at like even a player like that. I mean, um, you think of like, okay, cutting bait. I mean, you looking at the roster. I mean, they're not really ready to compete right away, are they?
Well, so it depends. Again, it also depends where you look. In the
Hmm.
NFL, no. In the NFC, not really. Like more so, but less. In the NFC South, yep. Does that put them in the playoffs? Yep. Can you
Hmm.
get lucky and win one or two? Not lucky, but can you get hot at the right time? Yeah. Now, I'm not going to sit here and they can tell you they're going to take out Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes on the AFC side or Jalen Hurts on the NFC side, but they can win the NFC South, which is all you ask for come tournament time is get in and see what happens.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't know. Like uh, when you look at the NFC South, I mean, I really like what Atlanta's done with the running game. I'm
Mm-hmm.
even scared. When the Bears play them, can the Bears stop the two-headed monster there? I mean, that's um, and obviously I've heard a lot of people, say, oh, the Panthers, could win, but I mean, I would be surprised. And as a Bears fan, obviously, it would be good for us, if the Panthers didn't do well, right?
Right.
For the number one or a better
For
pick.
that
But
first round pick next year. Yeah.
absolutely. And defensively, like you look at, I mean, obviously they've got Brian Burns. I mean, they have a decent defense, don't they?
Oh, most certainly, dude. Now
Mhm.
there are question marks there because we don't know who's going to rush the passer on the other side of Brian Burns, and can J.C. Horn, Dante Jackson stay healthy on the corners? We were talking about this on our show last night, Charlotte Sports Live. Is every team needs a healthy and good quarterback and their best one or two players on offense. Like every team needs that. But then every team kind of builds their defense a little bit differently, I was saying. And some have it strong up front inside, some are strong up front on the outside, some are linebackers, some are corners. The Panthers have built their defense. Their best is their secondary with Dante Jackson, Von Bell, now they've added from Cincinnati, and J.C. Horn. And they also have C.J. Henderson, who had a tough stretch last year, but as a third corner, nickel corner with Keith Taylor, I mean, certainly could be okay. That's their strength. But if they lose J.C. Horn and Dante Jackson, they're in a world of hurt because they don't have the guys up front outside of Brian Burns to get to the quarterback consistently. Now we are seeing them move to a 3-4 defense. Ken Marquise Haynes and Yetur Gross-Matos, is Frankie Luvu going to be able to get there? And maybe it will. But the way it's worked in the past is if that secondary gets hurt, they're in trouble because the rest of the defense is predicated on holding the wide receivers down for a little bit extra time while they get to the quarterback, versus a lot of teams are, speed the quarterback up and give the corners less time to cover.
It's so interesting how teams, build those defenses or decide to go, 3-4, 4-3, whatever they decide to do. And I always wonder, like, if they do it, based on division or, where they're at. I mean, within, their division, I mean, I would even look at the Saints as a team. I mean, I don't know if you're worried about Derek Carr at all, or if, I mean, but
Chris
he's
Olave, I mean, Derek Carr is certainly good enough, and Chris Olave is an absolute threat. You know,
they're gonna
so
they're gonna have to throw it around, aren't they?
yeah, they're definitely gonna have to throw it around. And the NFC South, notoriously for the last handful of years, was a massive passing league, like some of the best in the NFL. It's obviously not there right now, but in the past. I mean, you had Jameis Winston, but he was throwing for a billion yards and a billion touchdowns along with a billion interceptions. And Drew Brees you had, and you also had Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, like receivers and quarterbacks galore. So you had to have guys that would defend that.
Talking about kind of receivers, and we talked about this a little bit offline. Obviously, DJ Moore going to the Bears. I'm excited for DJ Moore. Talking to a lot of Packer fans, they're downplaying that. Talk a little bit about DJ Moore and how good he is, and maybe some weaknesses that you had shared as well.
He's good. Like he is a good wide receiver. And I think he's more versatile than a lot of players, or not players, but a lot of fans think, because he can do a lot of things in motion and get jet sweeps type of deal like that. Gets the ball behind the line of scrimmage and he's successful. Very talented. He's not awesome at getting separation from the corners. So there are times where he has some issues with that. But now you can ask the question: was that the offense that Matt Rule and Ben McAdoo were running, or was it the quarterbacks that he was playing with? Like, this dude has played with, and he had resounding success with some pretty tough quarterbacks. I mean, he was awesome with PJ Walker, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Kyle Allen, Taylor Heineke, hurt Cam Newton. I mean, the list goes on of guys that aren't exactly headed for Canton. Good dudes, but not great quarterbacks. So he's done well with less. So I'm excited to see him and what he does with Justin Fields.
I agree. And obviously, Justin Fields has had issues with, receivers that aren't open. But, I mean, in a second year in that offense, I think that can help, and especially, with, Mooney and Claypool, another year in the system as well. I think that can help.
Like DJ Moore's had 3 1,000+ yard seasons. Last year he didn't have one because of all the, again, even more questions at quarterback. He was on track to have 4 straight years of 1,000+. That doesn't happen if you're not talented.
Well, all right, I'm going to put you on the spot then. Would you take DJ Moore or Christian Watson?
I'd take DJ Moore because I've seen him do it with way less quarterbacks than Aaron Rodgers. Christian Watson did it for half a year with arguably the best quarterback we've seen, right? Just for argument's sakes. So it doesn't mean Christian Watson isn't going to be awesome, but I'd rather have a guy that's done it for 4 years, 1,000+. He's been in the league 5 years, but has done it for half a decade with really bad quarterbacks, than a guy that's done it for half a year with the greatest. Like, that's a no-brainer to me.
I would agree. Going back to a quarterback, former quarterback and a head coach, when you look at Frank Reich, I mean, what do you see his expectations, for this first year? I mean, are they going to have to rely more on the run this year as they kind of get Bryce Young acclimated, or what are you kind of hearing?
Yes, they're definitely going to have to rely more on the run than the pass, but it's still a passing league, and every game comes down to the quarterback making an X number amount of plays to win a game, especially down in crunch time. I think it honestly comes down more, and it's a boring answer, to the coaching staff. Like, how do you set up the run game with the pass game? How do you set up Bryce Young for success? What does this scheme do for this rookie quarterback? And how do you get Miles Sanders free and open when the defense is going to be keying all over him like they were Christian McCaffrey in the years past? So I think it really comes down to, because I don't think Bryce is going to struggle with being good as much as, just being consistent drive after drive, week after week in the NFL. He's going to have bad games. He's going to have bad drives, and he's probably going to cost the Panthers a game or two because he's a rookie. Again, and everyone's going to lose their mind. Doesn't mean he's not going to be good. But Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, they all had struggles. Bryce Young isn't going to be the first quarterback that never struggles. So it's about how the coaching staff adapts to that, how do they adjust to that, and how they allow him to be successful. They're not going to ask him to go out there and throw 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. That'd be asinine. But they are going to ask him to go out there. He's going to know the playbook. They're going to have the full playbook, which is a huge asset for a rookie, because often so many rookie quarterbacks don't have the full playbook at their disposal early in the season until they can fully grasp it. And I say that he's going to, because I expect him to learn it. And then how do you work that within Miles Sanders, and how do you set him up for success?
I feel like I have the same conversation with Packer fans about Jordan Love, right? Yeah, obviously, we don't know what he can be.
You
Maybe
talk
is
to a lot of Packer fans.
I do, I do. I have to be ready with all the ammo and all that stuff. So, and Friday was on one with 6 Packer fans, and they were all yelling at me. So I was just kind of patiently waiting.
That's funny.
But yeah, taking my lumps. But yeah, with that, I feel like it's the same conversation of maybe Jordan Love is good, but it's going to be up and down. He's going to have the full playbook, but you really have to you can't expect him to throw for 300 yards a game. I mean, obviously they've got the running back. So I don't know. I
I
mean,
mean, like I'd rather have Jordan Love hasn't done anything.
mm-mm.
Like it was the Matt Flynn deal. Matt Flynn played one game for the Packers, and he went and signed what was like a $52 million deal with the Seahawks, and then got beat out by a 3rd-round draft pick named Russell Wilson. So no, Bryce Young hasn't done anything either. So we're gonna find out.
Yeah, I agree, and obviously that's a good thing about the NFL. I mean, the wait and see. Everyone's excited. Packer fans are saying, well, a quarterback that has they've proven that they can do it in Green Bay. They can wait behind 3 years, but really the only way to learn the NFL is playing, right?
100%. It's the only way to prove that you can play football. You can learn and not play, but that goes so far. Like if it's a scale of 1 to 10, that gets you to like a 5 or a 6, maybe a knowledge, and then it doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant.
Well, yeah, and so on that kind of note as well, what's harder coming into a game, maybe halfway through the game or starting from first snap?
I hate this answer because it depends on the team. It depends on the
Mm.
situation. Do you want to go out there and start day one for the Texans? Do you want to go out there day one now and start for the Cardinals without DeAndre Hopkins and their front office situation? Or do you want to go out there and start day one for the Panthers, who have a foundation built and is in a bad NFC South? I think generally speaking, you don't want to start day one from a competitive standpoint. Like you want to start every day.
Mhm.
But it's better to not start week one, because if you're starting week one as a rookie, your team likely is not very good. Hence, they went out and got
With the Panthers though, they're in a better spot as far as the offensive line than they have been.
you. Big time. Like it's a B plus line now. It was a C minus D line 2 years ago. And
I
they're
would
bringing
say,
them all back. Like 2 years ago. So think about this. 2 years ago, they had 13 different starting offensive lineup groups throughout the year. Last year, they had 2. And the only reason they had 2 is because Pat Elflein was named the starter to start the season, not Bradley Bozeman. And then once they plugged Bradley in, the running game just took off because they took on this like bear mentality of running downhill aggressively. And now they bring back that entire starting offensive line. Austin Corbett might not be ready by the start of the season after he tore his ACL last week, the last week of the season against the Saints. But to have that continuity is humongous versus what they had 2 years ago.
I mean, it almost sounds like obviously with the Bears, what they tried to do last year, they've upgraded. I like what they've done. And you look at the offensive line is extremely important to a quarterback success,
Gosh.
right?
Yeah, I look at was it Derek's who was the car for the
David Carr.
David Carr. Like that dude is
Yeah.
like was consistently sacked 70 plus times a season. That kid could have been good, but you can't play quarterback like this. You can't
Mm-mm.
play it lying on your back, and that's what happened to him. It ruined his entire career. It happens to everybody that has a bad line.
Well, speaking of offensive line, and I know you're a Northwestern guy, and
Okay.
what are your thoughts on Peter Skoronski? Like, as a Bears fan, I liked him, but I was glad they passed on him. Thinking maybe he might be more of a guard. What are your thoughts on him and his landing spot with the Titans?
So I trust people that know the trenches. I do not sit here and be like, I can tell by his hands and his footwork that he's great. Like I just don't. I'm not going to sit here and back like I know the interior lineman's game or even the exterior lineman game. But everyone I talk to says that he is a stud. Like he's an absolute stud. And so was and the same group said the same thing about the kid that went to San Diego who got hurt last year, but was nearly all pro as a rookie. Now I can't remember his name. Gosh, dang it.
I'll think of it here. Yeah.
But anyway, those same people said that kid was a stud, and he ended up being an absolute Rashawn Slater. So between the two of them, apparently we're left tackle you now. I wish we could do that at some other positions, but trusting those guys, he's a stallion.
Look at that. 2 years in a row talking about a player in their hands.
About that. Yeah. Kenny Pickett was last year. Yeah. It was 2 years ago. Yeah, see, it was 2 years ago when we talked.
Well, okay, maybe it was. Yeah. Time
Crazy.
flies.
No kidding.
When you look at, obviously we've talked NFL and just want to, get your thoughts then on your Northwestern Panthers. I actually had a chance to take my kids to when they played Wisconsin basketball. That's kind of a fun little stadium there.
Yeah, I haven't been to the new one, but I heard it's great. Like they did it well. They made it smaller so they can fill it, and it's nice.
It was, just the atmosphere. It was, and obviously it was rescheduled for COVID and stuff. So it was kind of a weird Monday night game, but I really liked the atmosphere.
Yeah. And we were good last year. Like it was a blast to watch the Cats last year because we were relevant, and we are not that every year, and it was fun.
And you got a lot of people coming back. I think,
Boo Booey coming back, which was sick. Love that.
With the NIL, and I'm sure you talk a little bit about this, but it's almost like, whatever sport it is now, it's almost in a way helped college sports, hasn't it?
So it's so funny you say this. I was thinking about this in the shower the other day, just kind of like going through my day and like kind of some talking points that I want to have on the show. And NIL is so bad in a myriad of ways. It is also so great in a lot of other myriad of ways. It's going to be really interesting to see the guys that should never have gone to the NBA draft, that didn't get drafted, or that were going to go to the second round. Do they stay around in college basketball for another year or maybe two? And that makes the product in the college basketball that much better, because I personally prefer college basketball to the NBA. I just think it's a more fun product. The pageantry is awesome, and I love the style of game, the team aspect on offense and defense. But you can't argue the best players in the world are obviously in the NBA, and you watch them shoot, you watch what they do. It is so far above and beyond what college basketball players are able to do. You watch a college game sometimes, and you wonder if you can beat them one-on-one, or if you should be starting for that team if they have a bad day. So the product from that level, that standpoint, should be elevated because of NIL. Like Boo Booey may have gone pro overseas because it was worth it, or done whatever, but he's coming back, and that makes college basketball better.
It really does. And what about the Wildcat football team? Are you expecting much from them in 2023, or
they better give me more than they gave me last year, because I got so stoked when we beat Nebraska on the road in Ireland, and we lost every single game after that. We aren't good unless we have a quarterback. And the issue is, if we don't have a quarterback, we don't have enough talent outside of that to make anything happen. And then if we get any injuries, we don't have the depth. But obviously Pat Fitzgerald and his staff are just incredible at turning 3-star recruits, 2-star recruits into NFL talent, which is very, like, Wisconsin is so good at that too. They develop talent. Unfortunately, we only have 3-4 guys that happens with. So, Ohio State sends a gaggle of them to the NFL every year, and we're trying to compete. And if we lose one of them, forget about it.
Now, covering the Panthers, you obviously know Matt Rule pretty well. Are you worried about Nebraska at all?
Yeah, I'm not this year, because it's not like he's going to be able to revamp the team like that. I think they'll have some more success. Scott Frost obviously had very little success there, because I'm sure they wanted to fire him but didn't want to because it was Scott Frost. And Matt's got a proven record in college. He has done some very successful things
quickly too.
Exactly. So yeah, like, I don't love the idea that he's going to turn Nebraska probably into a good football team. And you know Nebraska is going to be, those boosters are going to pay those kids. Like, they want to see that team more than anything. Those car dealerships are going to be hawking cars out to everybody that's any good.
Yeah, there's nothing else to do in Nebraska.
Yeah, it's their everything, which is awesome. Like that's what makes it so amazing. That's what makes college football so amazing. You go to any college town, Iowa, there's
Mhm.
nothing to do in Iowa
I
but
would
that
agree.
host
Yep.
college football games, and that's what's really cool.
Well, this has been fantastic. I definitely appreciate you coming on. I'm excited to see what the Panthers do. Obviously, I'm looking at as a Bears fan what they're going to do, and no one really knows what we are what we're going to see until obviously training camps and all those things take shape. But what would be your kind of realistic kind of expectations? I don't know if you've gone through a win loss record, anything like that, or.
I haven't done it quite yet because I just
Mhm.
want to watch this all unfold, if you will. I got a general idea, but what I would say is success will probably. I think they have to be playing meaningful football within the last 2 weeks of the season, and they
Mm.
have to because they did last year. If they did it last year and fired their head coach, brought an interim, and won down the stretch, and had a chance with Sam Darnold, then you've got to be able to do it again this year in a weak division.
So
Doesn't mean they
yeah,
get in, but like relevancy.
yeah, that is so interesting because, you know, uh, you look at some of the games and there's a lot versus the NFC North this year, and we don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
I obviously I talked to a Packer fan, and he
Packers aren't going to be good, right? Like we can't.
I don't
Have they gotten on board with that, or what do you think?
I don't think they're going to be. I did a show, and everybody lost their mind when I said the Packers were going to win 3 to 4 games this year.
They weren't good last year with Aaron Rodgers, and so what you take
Exactly.
your best player away, and you're like so much better, so much. I don't think it works that way.
Well, the thoughts are that there were a lot of injuries on defense, and that Jordan Love will operate more in the offense than Rodgers. But I'm not buying that.
That is the most fan thing. It's like no, no, no. This is good because Rodgers was just ad libbed way too
Yes,
much. Like yeah, like okay, okay. If that's then fine.
these
That's it.
these are the fans that I'm talking to. Absolutely, and I do
And I
have.
love Packer fans. I think generally speaking, they're awesome.
There are, and I've got a few that are on my show that are very realistic, and but most of them are just kind of assuming that all of these NFC South games are winnable, and I'm just not 100% sure on that. Obviously I like what Atlanta and New Orleans are doing, and if the Panthers, that is an interesting point. I mean, they were playing relevant football with Sam Darnold. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even think about that, so that gives me a little bit of pause. Thinking about where they're at. I mean, but I think, yeah, when you're honest about your roster and really you look at what the Packers are doing, if you see what they're doing, they've got a young team. You
Mm-hmm.
can't expect them to win it right away, and it's going to be a rude awakening for Packer fans that if they see, especially week one. I mean, I've tried to kind of break it down logically and say, well, how are and maybe you might be able to answer this. How would the Packers win week one in Chicago?
Because it's everything's an unknown. Everyone's kind of bad week one. No one can really tackle. Everyone's out of sync, so you just never know what happens. So I've actually made the point that if you're the Panthers, we kind of talked about this on Charlotte Sports Live is
Mm-hmm.
before the schedule came out. Give me the hardest game first because
Mm.
you could just fall into one. Like we've seen that. We saw the Packers get their tail whipped. I think it was by the Saints week one a couple years ago, and then the
Mm-hmm.
Packers ended up being like really good down the stretch. So week one, you don't know because you can't tackle anymore in training camp. You can't do anything to really get good at football anymore.
What about like on the road? Does that make a difference anymore?
I think it certainly does, but I do think that there's something. Whatever camp you want to fall in, we're a band. We're on the road. Like we're together. It's us versus the world. Or you're at home. If I will say that if it's week one, I think being on the road is okay. I said give me for the Panthers. I said give me the Seahawks on the road week one. Very good team. Get it out that long trip out of the way because you're rested, you're ready to roll, you're healthy. That way you're not playing a short week or two road games in a row, and you got to travel across the country. Like get that out of the way.
So you brought up, band, we're all together. Does that, from what you've noticed, does that make a difference? Like a new rookie quarterback or a new quarterback on the road, just being able to prove that to his teammates that yes, because with the Packers, Aaron Rodgers walks in anywhere, he's got that cachet. He's done it before. But with the Bryce Young, with the Jordan Love or whoever, I mean, is there a sense that they almost have to prove to their teammates that they can do that on the road, or is that not really a factor?
I think they have to prove to the teammates they can do it anywhere. Can you play at this level? We want you to. We got your back, but you got to go out and do it. Like, we can't do it for you. We can set you up for success, and then winning in general is first, and then winning on the road comes after that, because it's not easy. And then what happens if you play for Philly or New York or somewhere that's a hostile environment and you're not playing well, and then you're getting booed at home and on the road? Like, there's a lot to kind of figure out when it comes to the crowd.
Well, and you've been in media long enough. I mean, you're able to kind of hear like coach speak or player speak when they're like, "Oh yes, we're behind this guy. He's great," right?
You can tell pretty quickly in the locker room. That's where you get it. Not so much at the podium, depending on the guy, but in the locker room when you talk to the guys, away from the camera, you can pick it up really quickly.
And so, I mean, when you look at this season, obviously, they want the Panthers to play meaningful football, but if they don't, they're going to give Frank Reich time to kind of continue to build this, obviously, right?
Absolutely. Like, he's got 3 years to figure. He's got probably longer than that, but I'm saying at the minimum, if it goes poorly, he's still going to get a chance, because you're dealing with a rookie quarterback. You're dealing with some things, changing defenses. You want to get the right guys in the right spots, because they are playing some guys that are out of position right now on the defensive side of the ball because of that switch. So he's going to have a minimum of 3 years, even if it goes poorly, which I don't think it will, because you're not in a bad enough division to where you're just going to get your ass handed to you every single week.
What about fan wise? I know the last time we talked about, just kind of continue to gain, traction, with everything else going on in Carolina. I mean, fan wise, is that a little bit different or?
Yeah. So it's different from the standpoint of they started to really jump on board last year because they saw a good product and they saw some winning. You can say the Panther fans this, that, or the other, or fans in general are, but if you have a bad product, like, why would you go to the store and buy something that tastes disgusting? Why would you go to the store to buy a shirt that falls apart? Why are you paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars to go watch a bad product? And the Panthers right now are starting to turn that curve, and they also are getting some star power in there at the right positions. They had arguably the biggest star in Christian McCaffrey, but the running back position, unless you're Derrick Henry, like, it doesn't really draw unless your team's really orchestrated around that and you're having success. So if you have the star power in Bryce Young and he's starting to play well and you start to win, even if it's in a lower division, and that's why you're relevant, like, the fan base will show up and they will start to spend their hard-earned money to watch a product they want to watch. You're not watching a bad movie 3 times. Like, I've watched Top Gun Maverick 3 times because it's an awesome movie. There's several movies out there I have not watched once, let alone 3.
It's funny you say that. I just watched it for the 3rd time the other night as well. So
good.
It really is. And just that nostalgia and everything. Yeah, I would agree. Well, this has been fun. I definitely appreciate you coming on. Where can everyone find you again? And are you still doing your other project as well, right?
Yeah, so I got my podcast, A Relatable Journey, starting to push out some more stuff on there on social media. Find me on Twitter at Will Kunkel Fox, or find me on Instagram at Will Kunkel. It's all KUNKEL. And I love talking to fans. I love talking to people that know the game, even the ones that don't. It's hilarious to interact with them too. So it's a blast, and I hope you guys have success outside of the week that you play the Panthers, and it'll be fun to see what you guys and the Packers do week 1 for sure.
10 wins for the Bears.
Yeah, so you got?
I went through it, and my Packer co-host told me I was on drugs, but you look at it.
This is the year where you overestimate. This is the time of year. This is the time of year that you overestimate. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I even had the Bears losing to Denver, and even losing to the Saints. So, but it's there.
Let's see. I'm going to run through this real quickly. I hope you have time for this. All right.
Yeah,
so Packers
absolutely.
at home. It's like, so let's give them a split with the Packers. Did you do that? No. So you're going up there. So you can't you don't, like, I automatically assume the Panthers are going to split with the Falcons. They're going to split with the Saints, and I'll give them a sweep of the Bucks.
So, normally I would do that, but I look at maybe where the
normally you should do it the other way. Normally you should take 2 L's.
Not against the Packers, this year. I thought,
not this year, but normally.
Yeah, normally they have, but they don't have Rodgers, right?
Right.
It's on the road, and obviously, I'm not in the locker room, but I just have a hard time, thinking Jordan Love when he hasn't proven yet he's going to go in, Soldier Field. When the Bears were close, the Bears were actually in another 6 games other than the 3 ones they won. It was close. They almost beat Minnesota at Minnesota. They almost beat the Lions. Obviously, a lot of these teams got better. The Vikings arguably have gotten a little bit worse. But you go ahead if you want to split.
Hold on,
I was on with a Packer radio guy as well. He was on CBS Sports Radio, and we were going through the Bears schedule, and I saw him slowly realize, oh, this is a 9-win team. He said, I'm gonna go bet the over. I'm like, all right.
I've got you at 6 or 7 losses, so that's 10, 11 wins, right?
It is.
There
Who
you
do you
go.
have us losing to?
So I got you losing at Kansas City.
Yep.
Got you losing to Denver.
Yep.
I've got you losing to the Chargers, losing at the Saints.
Yep.
Got you losing at Minnesota. So I just did the split. Like that's just kind of my generic deal. And then losing, I think it was like one more game, like an Atlanta, Cleveland, Detroit type of situation, which every good team kind of just loses a game here and there. So whatever that came out to be.
Yeah, that's about right.
I think maybe at Detroit you can lose. Like it's not, it's on the road. It's just a lot. When you look at the schedule, I was fine doing this with the Panthers. I looked at the schedule before it came out, and I'm like, oh, this is not a hard schedule. And then it comes out, and you're like, home away, home. I'm like, oh, this is a lot tougher than I thought it was 24 hours ago.
Well, yeah, in there are a lot of people that are not high on Denver because of what happened last year, but I do like their defense, and I think that offensively they can, if they can run the ball, I think they can beat the Bears. And talking to the Packers, the Packers play them at Denver, which I think is harder, obviously with the altitude and everything. So
yeah, for sure. And we could admit the Bears haven't proven anything, right? Like we can admit
that
they're
absolutely
not a good team as far as we've seen. I mean, they were just horrible down. My God, there's a lot of red L's down the stretch.
But look at the well, toward the end, absolutely. When I think, but
towards the end, it was 8 week to 18.
That's true. Well, so I went to the Texans game, and I also went to the Dolphins game, and it's so crazy in the stadium how much different the Texans win was versus the loss to the Dolphins. Like and obviously that was the first game with Claypool, and they were able to do different things. So I like what you said about DJ Moore doing jet sweeps and things like that, because in that game they started doing more of that with Cole Kmet, and it opened up the offense. And so that, like, I'm just thinking of what they can do with DJ Moore to continue to open up that offense.
Put him in motion and move him around pre-snap, and that will open up the defense and get their eyes darting around. That's what they got to do. It's very simple. Very simple.
That's what so I'm looking for it. But they were in that Packer game. Justin Fields, I remind Packer fans that he ran through that defense like Swiss cheese for a touchdown. So, and they were in that Eagles game when they had no business being, because of that crazy run by Fields. So they're in these games. You add Darnell Wright is just, hearing out of camp, just how much of a savage he is. And I think going to be good. It's going to take some time, obviously, but add Nate Davis. So, so
you guys didn't have one receiver go over 100 yards last year.
That doesn't surprise me with the injuries.
Your highest was Mooney at 94. And then after that, there wasn't another guy that had 90 plus yards. 84 Pettis. Wolf.
That's
love DJ Moore.
Well, that's what I hear. Packer fans are saying, well, this Fields had these stats and everything, but a lot of it, he needs to continue to grow. But a lot of it also is the wide receivers. I mean, we had the wrong St. Brown, so
it's the most team-oriented sport in the world. No quarterback is good without a good offensive line and wide receivers. No running back is good without the good offensive line. No wide receivers are good without the quarterback. No secondary can protect for 9 seconds without a rush. Like it can goes on. It's just a circle. Like
it is
like most consummate team sport in the world.
Well, that's why I'm not a huge fan of Aaron Rodgers, but you have to respect him. I mean, he one of the best quarterbacks, of all time. And I don't put those playoff losses on him. I think the Packers could have surrounded him better.
They went out and got Jordan Love 4 years ago.
Mhm.
Not a like, it's got to be one of the worst front office moves of all time. Like, it has to be.
Absolutely.
He won the MVP that year.
Absolutely. You look at it, because I'm a Cubs fan, and I don't care how bad the Cubs are now, right? You can't take that 2016 World Series away. You can't, and I live here in Wisconsin, and I remind Brewer fans of that. And you maximize the window you have. You have Aaron Rodgers, you have a Hall of Fame quarterback, maximize the window. Don't try to, move on.
No, play the right now game. Do not play the game for 4 or 5 years. Don't try to outsmart yourself. Win right now and just figure it out. Cross the bridge when it's there and you're on the bridge. Cross it.
Well, that's why I'm hoping the Bears are on the bridge. The Panthers are getting there.
You guys aren't any further along the bridge than the Panthers. You had the number 1 overall pick because you were the worst in the NFL.
That was by design. I tell Packer fans they need to tank for Caleb Williams.
That means you're wrong about him or Drake May.
That would scare me. Honestly, I do like the Packers wide receivers. You pair them with a young quarterback.
Yeah, and you can go find receivers unless you want a backup quarterback in the first round like Jordan Love, of course.
I'm going to keep my mouth shut on that one. But
Dude,
I feel like
a lot of fun. This has been awesome.
I feel like we could talk forever.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll connect again in the future. But once again, this has been an NFL Outdated Coverage 2 series on the Panthers. And thanks again, Will Kunkel.
Hey, man. Thank you for having me, brother.
Have a great day.